Today, I finished reading a book that I enjoyed very much. It was a book in Danish that's called Richtige Gute Gide Ik Psychology. So real guides don't care about psychology. And the book is written by 5 different authors. Each of them takes a portion of the Bible and then offers a modern interpretation of it. So this could be a description of a text that is very similar with a few adjustments, or this could be a completely modern story happening in today's world with some narrative connections or some similarities in a plot to what happened in the Bible. And every time after you read the work of the author, there is a portion of the Bible in Danish. And this gave me an idea. As an Israeli Jew, I read the Bible in the original language, Hebrew, and I read all of it, and I read it many times. Of course, I'm speaking about the New Testament, which is the Old Testament, the part that is part of our Jewish belief. I read also the New Testament, but this was originally written in Greek, even though it has a lot of references to the Old Testament, which are, of course, referring to the original Hebrew text. So I read it also mostly in Hebrew. But after I read the Bible in Hebrew, I studied several other languages, and I always try to read the Bible in the languages that I learned. So first in English, and then in German, and in French, and in Danish. And I found this practice of reading the language in many languages, reading the Bible in many languages, as profitable to me as a multilingual. And that is exactly what I want to speak about today. I want to explain why reading the Bible in many languages is a great exercise for multilinguals who want to become more fluent, more comfortable with a variety of other languages. My name is Shai Dotan. I'm Associate Professor of International and Public Law at the University of Copenhagen Faculty of Law, and the purpose of this series of lectures is to help you improve your English and your language skills. What was it about reading the Bible in a variety of other languages that made it such a powerful tool for learning those languages? The reason is I already knew the Bible, and because I read it in original Hebrew so many times, I knew significant parts of it by heart. Maybe not every sentence, but if I would read a text in a different language, I can easily compare it mentally to a text in Hebrew that is in my head, the memory that I have of the same text in the original. I thought about this technique based on something that my grandmother, Olga, may she rest in peace, told me. Olga was born to a family that was multilingual. She started to speak relatively late as a child, but when she started to speak, she spoke in 5 languages. She had 5 mother tongues, basically. So she was used to knowing a lot of languages at the same time. And when she embarked a bit later in life, and by this I mean probably in her teens, I don't know exactly when she did that, probably in the very early teens or maybe even earlier, on studying yet another language in addition to the 5 that she knew as her mother tongue, she said the technique was very simple. She would take a masterpiece, like Tolstoy's War and Peace. She would have it in the language that she wants to study, let's say Russian, for example, and then she would also have it in the one of the languages she was fluent in, which could be, I don't know, Serbo-Croatian or Hungarian or any of the other languages that she knew, and then she would basically go through the text that she was reading in both the languages. Sentence after sentence, she would read in a language that she knows very well. She would have a text in her head, and then she would try to compare it to the text in the new language. And once you repeat it enough times, you recognize words after word after word. You learn a basic vocabulary, and then it's just a matter of practice later on. Now, I'm very similar to my grandmother in this respect, that I can read a text that I understand very little of and still enjoy it and still have the passion to continue to do that, or at least there were many years of my life in which I did it on a regular basis. Recently, I've been doing a bit less of that, and I think that's a pity. And because of that, I could try to do a similar exercise. So there are books, for example, that would have one page in Spanish, German, Hungarian, you name it, another page in English, and then you can compare the pages. I have quite a few books like this, acquired quite a few books like this over the years, and that's a technique that can work. But the problem with this technique is you have to look a sentence after a sentence, or at least a paragraph after paragraph, and that's always time consuming and difficult. You also are continuously taken out of the language that you wish to study, because you need to go back to the other language that you feel more comfortable with. Let's say usually English. You go from English to the other language, and this exactly is what you want to avoid when you study a new language. You want to reach immersion. You want to reach a situation where you think in the language that you study. So it's a much better situation to have the text already in your head, so you understand the text and you know what to expect, instead of continuously reading it in another language, such as English, before you study a new language. But the problem is, how many books do I know by heart? I mean, I know a lot of poems by heart, but I don't know prose by heart almost at all, besides the Bible. And the benefit of of my knowledge of the Bible, is that I don't actually know all the sentences one after the other fully by heart, but I know quite a lot of the sentences, and if I see a sentence in a different language, I know what it's getting at. So I understand the meaning of a sentence, I understand the context very well, and many times I would also know the exact words that were used in the Hebrew original, so I can really try to track the meaning more deeply and understand it on a deeper linguistic level, and basically understand how good the translation is, how accurate it is. And that's exactly the level that you want to reach when you study a language. So what I get is basically a superpower. I read a text that is usually quite a complicated, high-level text, and I know what it's going to say before it already says it, because I know the Bible to begin with. And then I can read the text and I can basically understand from the context what at least not every word, but a lot of the words mean. So I read the text, I know what the sentence is supposed to mean, and I say, okay, this word is supposed to mean X, this word is supposed to mean Y, and slowly I build the vocabulary. So that's a very, very powerful tool if you practice it. Now, if your level in a language is not that high, or your level of proficiency of the Bible is not such that you almost know it by heart, you can read a more, for example, an easier version of a text. And I've done that also in some languages. I had an excellent version in German that I enjoyed to read, and I could read the whole Bible, but it was a very much simplified and short and abridged version. And that's something that I think many people can do. So you already know the context, you know the stories, you know the plot, you know the characters to begin with, even if you don't know the exact sentences, and then it just helps you to go through it. Because you understand the context, you will understand the word, you will get the vocabulary, and you will get the best benefit that you can learning a new language just by practicing reading the Bible in this language. The second advantage of using the Bible as a tool to acquire new languages is that it is available. And that's a very, very important element when you look at lifelong education, at really reaching your goals of becoming better. You want to set yourself goals that you can stick to. And this means that if you're traveling a lot, if you're going to other countries, you cannot carry your own language with you, you need the ability to have the translations of the Bibles that are available to you. And this you can have everywhere, because if you go to any country, you can get the Bible in the local language in practically any language that you want, many times for free. So people will just hand you over a Bible and be very, very glad and say thank you when you accept it absolutely for free. And I've done this many times in many situations. Many times I would take it, and if it would be just for a New Testament, and I never shied away from reading it as a Jew, and I always enjoyed that. Or if it's a full Bible with the Old Testament and the New Testament, I'm always ready to accept that, and I've covered many copies over the years, spread now over countries that I've been to. So availability is very, very important, because you can get the Bible everywhere. You can get it basically for free or almost for free, and you can get a mass of text that is good, that is long enough. So that's another thing that I think is an important element. You can read through the many sub-books of the Bible over quite a long time and get enough practice. So that's the technical element. You need text that is long, available, and cheap. But in addition to that, the translations of the Bible offer you something more, which is, of course, quality and diversity. So in any language, you will find very high quality translations of the Bible, which is not something you can say about practically any book. Okay, so any language that you go, you have the best experts who would write an excellent translation, and you can basically learn from that. And you have not just one translation, you have countless versions. So let's say if you take English, you can still enjoy today the King James Version. And that's every time I'm looking for something poetic or that has a flavor of something magical and unique and arcane, I would like to go to the King James Version. If I like something more practical, there are literally hundreds of other versions, again, written by the best experts, all of them very highly committed, and they did an amazing job, and they would write a different version that is in modern English and that is easier and more accessible. And the same applies, I think, in probably any other large language that you're looking at. You would always be able to see that. You can have abridged versions, like I mentioned before. So if you don't have so much time and you want to do it with less effort, and you don't know the Bible that well, and you don't know the language that you go to that well, even there's versions for children, and versions that are abridged, and versions that are easy. There is basically as many versions as you could desire, and all of them are linking into this benefit that you're dealing with a text that you know, and if you don't know, then you should know, because everybody should know the Bible. And basically based on that, you can practice as much as you want in any level of a language that you want, and get these many dozens of hours of practice that are necessary to build your knowledge of another language, to build your vocabulary, to build your understanding of the grammar, to train your ear to get used to the language. All these things you can get through reading the Bible in translations. The most important reason why you should read the Bible in different languages and become a better multilingual is that the Bible is quite simply the best book ever written. Not just the most popular book ever written by far, but also the best. It has a rich and fascinating plot, it has deep characters, it has symbolism, it has poetry and unique language. It gives you the ability to go through almost every form of writing and of human culture. So you have books that are very philosophical, like Ecclesiastes and Job, and you have books that are basically historical books, like Kings and Judges and Samuel. And you have books that are kind of called mythical history, like the Genesis, or to some extent Exodus. You have books that are pure poetry, like Psalms and the Song of Songs, and you have a lot of books that combine this, including the great prophets, of course, Isaiah and Ezekiel and so on, books that contain great oratory and philosophical arguments and historical discussions. All of this is offered to you by the Bible. I once had a conversation with some of my friends, and we were discussing the Bible and praising it, and we said there's just one thing that the Bible misses. It's not funny. It doesn't have any humor. And that's something that was very interesting for me for quite a few years. Why doesn't the Bible contain anything humorous? One of our greatest authors in Israel, Shai Agnon, who won the Nobel Prize of Literature, one of his characters used to say that the Bible is very, very funny. And he gives one example which is quite ridiculous, about the Assyrians that fell asleep and woke up and saw that they were dead. Which is a very, very ridiculous joke that I think even Agnon himself probably realized doesn't suffice for a book that holds hundreds of pages, if it is supposed to be funny, which it isn't. And I decided to do a little bit of research into it, and I realized that I was certainly not the first one to think about it. There are many, many scholars who explain why the Bible is not funny, and gave some attention to this issue. And I once was called to give a lecture in Chabad, which is an organization dedicated to bringing Jews together abroad. And I chose for my topic the question, why the Bible is not funny. And I decided to give my own perspective on that. And the perspective that has to do with the question, why do we say funny things at all? Okay, and there is a question that Sigmund Freud, father of psychoanalysis, tried to answer in his book The Joke and its relationship to the subconscious. And he said, Freud, that jokes are often used to say things that we don't feel comfortable to say directly. Okay? So we use humor to reflect the deeper emotions that are brimming in our subconscious without taking the risk of saying things as they really are. And this, to me, I think is a great explanation of why the Bible is not funny, because it does say things the way they are. And if you look at the beginning of the Bible, the very beginning, you have the story of creation. So first it starts with a very, very simple and easy story. Everything is created in its own day, the light and the sea and so on and so on. And then they created humans, and that was the end of the story. But then immediately, without giving any explanation for why we have a double story, appears a very mythological story about God creating Adam from earth, and then creating from his rib Eve, and then Eve being tempted by the snake, driven out of paradise, and so on and so on and so on. The whole story that comes later. And from that point on, the Bible never stops. And I have to say that it was a very difficult dilemma for me. At what age do I start to tell my own sons about the Bible? About, at the very beginning, the brother kills the other brother, kill neighbor. So it's you can't really escape from that. If you want to tell the story of the Bible, you have to tell about a lot of horrible things. And the Bible keeps telling you them very, very accurately and very precisely. It's all in your face. They never try to find a way to hide things. And that is exactly the beauty, I think, of the book. So as you're reading it, and as you're reading it in one language after the other, and if you're a multilingual, then you can do that in many, many languages, one after the other, you can appreciate that. And you can appreciate the beauty of a language together with the beauty of the story. A story that deals with everything that is human without holding anything back. Just everything is put to the most extreme emotion possible. And these are my reasons why I think that you should read the Bible in as many languages as you want to study, and use that not just to immerse yourself with this beautiful book, but to become a better multilingual with more fluency in more languages. That is all for today. For me, Shai Dotan. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to it, and please write me comments. I very much look forward to hear what you think about this video. And as always, until next time, keep learning.